Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Write or Die Show. I'm your host, Randi-lee. On the show, we interview other writers and we talk about mental health from their personal journeys. If you have not already, hit that like and subscribe button. Go ahead, do that now so that you never miss an episode. Hello, we have Lynne Harley with us today, a fellow Canadian. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Randi-lee. Yeah, and you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah. It looks like it's gonna rain, but that's okay. I can handle that.
Well, in my part of the world, we have sunshine, so it's a
I'll
beautiful.
trade.
I think I'll keep the sunshine for today. Thank you.
I don't think I like you anymore. So, well, tell us a little bit about who Lynn is, and then maybe I'll like you again.
Well, I hope you like me. So I'm Lynne Harley. I'm currently living in Camrose, Alberta. I was born and raised in Manitoba, spent a big chunk of my life in Saskatchewan, and
Wow.
my background is in social work. So I have a career of about 40 plus years in social work. And I was life coaching as a social worker, so doing a number of empowerment programs, mostly with women, which I really loved. And the last few years, I have just been consulting on my own as a transformational life coach. And I just published my first book this summer called What If You Could, which is a book about transformation and has a beautiful message for everyone, even though it's written as a children's story.
Okay, so that's what you do, but like, who are you?
Who am I? I am a spiritual being having a human experience.
I've had a few of those on the show.
Um, yeah, I think I'm just a person. First of all, I do have three children, three grown sons, beautiful young men. And I think for me, most of my life has been about really wanting to grow and evolve as a person. There's just
Okay.
something in me. I was raised personally in what I would consider a dysfunctional upbringing, which I mean is not unique in this world. Sometimes you wonder if there's such a thing as functional.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think that it's also been one of the things we say in coaching is that the content of our lives is the curriculum for our soul's evolvement.
Yeah, I like that.
So yeah, so I guess that speaks to me because I think that the content of what I've lived has really been the curriculum for how I want to move forward and how I want my soul to evolve.
That's cool. I like that saying. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's jump into the meat and potatoes.
Right.
And what mental health are we going to be talking about today?
Well, I thought what I would like to talk about is I was just sharing before we started this is this summer, I actually cycled on behalf of an organization that supports youth mental health in Canada called jack.org. And I did it in memory and celebration of my brother's life, Craig, who died sadly 5 years ago. And he was a beautiful, sensitive, intelligent, articulate young man who struggled most of his adult life with mental health. So his so that hit me hard. My mom had died within that same year, so it was a double whammy.
Oh, yeah.
And I really did sort of go down to the depths of despair for a while. I would call it just the grieving process.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. And I think, as I've come out of it, I realized moving forward and wanting to really celebrate my brother's life that we all live on a spectrum of mental health. There's times in our lives where we're going through some tough stuff and
Yeah.
we feel a little wobbly. And then there's times when we, kind of are on top of the mountain and have that sense of resilience and we can do anything. So as I came out of my grief, I actually relocated. It was like a fresh start. I decided that I was going to start a coaching business. I work with all kinds of people, but usually people in some kind of a transition. And even when it's a transition to something positive, there's still a sense of loss and there's still this
Yeah.
sense of leaving the comfort zone. And that's often what keeps people stuck is this, having to move beyond that comfort zone. And so when
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about how I wanted to celebrate my brother's life, because it was not for nothing, I checked into organizations across Canada that I would want to support or, tie the portion of my book sales to, which I'm doing. And I love the mission of jack.org. And so they actually are located in Toronto, but what I love about them is they serve all of Canada. So they have chapters across Canada and in all of the territories. And Jack was named after the son of the couple who founded jack.org, and he committed suicide in his first year at Queen's University in 2010. And when they found him, they said they had no idea he struggled. And so they really made it their mission to want to revolutionize the way that we talk about mental health. I think that we start to pave the way to make it okay for people to say, hey, I'm struggling and I need support.
Mm-hmm.
And their mission is to empower youth. So they're very much youth. They're evidence based. Everything that they do is evidence based. And they're empowering and training youth to go in and support other youth in schools and post secondary institutions. So I just loved what they did. It felt like they were not just putting a band-aid on something, but that they
Mm-hmm.
want to make a change. And so when you talked about what I want to talk about today, my brother died at 58, and it could have been suicide. He was actually he was not found for about 2 weeks, so they couldn't determine the cause.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but he had attempted previous to that. And he was 58 years old. And as I'm learning, as I'm really delving into what jack.org does, is that most mental distress will show up in youth. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
we can kind of open up those avenues and support people when they're young, then maybe this is going to support them as they grow into adults. And I think what's most disconcerting about suicide is that 25% of youth deaths are a result of suicide.
Yeah, it's a very high number.
I know.
And I
So,
think this is just an assumption I'm making. You might know better, but I think it has to do with, well, lots of different factors, but one of them being that a lot of people don't think that youth or kids can have these kind of issues, that, how hard could their life possibly be? So how could they possibly be depressed or have mental issues because their life is not that difficult? Um, and that's just not true.
no, and I think it's different stresses. Like I learned a lot on this trip. First of all, it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, I set out on a loaded bike with 4 panniers. I've never ridden toured like that. I've never ridden with panniers. I had a
What
tent,
are panniers? I don't know what that is.
like the saddlebags.
Okay, yeah.
So two in the front, two in the back. My life possessions for like 3 months. I just got home a week ago, and was initially prepared to be sleeping in a tent every night. And as I started this journey, I was supported in ways I couldn't imagine. I think I spent 2 nights in a tent in the first month. So
Wow.
people, random strangers or people who knew what I was doing, were setting up stays for me with people that they knew. But one of the things I learned, and I think I had that too, like, well, when we grew up, I'm from that generation where, I grew up with my dad saying, well, when I was a kid, we
Ugh.
walked 5 miles to school and life was so,
Uphill both ways.
and I just think it's so different, the stresses. And so one of the things, this is, well, two things I guess I want to speak about is how technology has impacted our world for youth. So when we were growing up, even when I had children, the first computer we got was so that my son, who was 6 at the time, could play learning games. So there was no interactive games on television, right? We didn't have like a Wi-Fi connection for World Wide Webs or anything.
Yeah.
So when I was traveling through one of the communities in Manitoba, I stayed with a teacher. I'd never met her before, but it was set up through somebody who knew what I was doing. And she teaches primary grades, and her kids are 13 and 14. And school was just out. And she told me that she was just going in to say goodnight to her son just a few days before I got there. And she said he was crying. He's like 13 years old. And she said, what's going on? And he's like, nothing, nothing. She goes, no, something's clearly going on. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
until you share what's going on. So he belongs to a gaming community, and this gaming community are his friends, even though
Yeah.
he's met these people virtually. And I mean, I have people that I consider sort of my online friends that I've
Oh,
actually
for sure.
met on this tour, which has been amazing because I never got to meet them before. But anyways, he had 2 friends. One was 13, and he had just committed suicide a week before, heard it through the grapevine. And this 13-year-old boy's girlfriend had also committed suicide. So I just thought, I mean, I had lots of time to sit on my bike when I was riding and think about the fact that when my kids were growing up, I knew who they were playing with. I knew who their friends were. It's like
Hmm.
I'm not going to their house until I meet them. I know a little bit about their.
Right? Yeah.
And I think, our world now is so big because of technology. I mean, these kids, I think, were from the states that he was playing with. His mother never had any idea of who the kids are in these gaming communities.
Hmm.
So I think, and it's not because she's a bad parent, she's obviously, you know, good for her for pushing her son to say what was going on.
Yeah.
I think that made me realize, and I think about the last 2 years of COVID, and I have three grandkids who are teenagers. And overnight, my 15-year-old granddaughter who danced 6 times a week was doing nothing.
Yeah.
Grandson who's very active in playing soccer and in sports was doing nothing. My grandson who's in grade 11, who, this is the time when you want to be connected to your friends and your peers,
Hmm.
is suddenly isolated and at home. And kids are turning to their computers for their relationships.
Yeah. And that's not in and of itself a bad thing. So my kid, he is 15 and all his friends are online. He hasn't been able to sustain good relationships here with people that he's met. He's had a few friends over the years, but um, having autism and anxiety and stuff, it makes it hard to connect sometimes in person. And he just never kind of found his people here. But he
Right.
has found some really good friends that he's actually known some of them for quite a few years. Um, and it is hard to know who they are. So at least for me, I know a few of them, again, just by being online, because I'll say, who are you talking to? I want to see their face. I want to, right? But that's about the extent of what I can do as a parent. And there's a couple friends that, like I said, they've been friends for a long time. So I'll be like, oh, hey, how are you? Because I kind of know what's going on in their life, just like I would if they came to the house. It's not exactly the same, but I think it takes a lot more active involvement to do that. And I mean, they could add another friend anytime that I wouldn't know. And I'd
Right.
have no way of knowing that they did unless my kid told me. Like I know, I think five of them that he talks to on a very regular basis. I know their names and stuff. I've seen their faces, but that's about the extent of what I can do. If they decide to add another person into their group chat, I have to hope that my son tells me as opposed to constantly going, so who's that one? Who's that one? Who's that one?
Yeah.
It's tricky.
It is tricky. Yeah. So, I mean, that's something that I've, had an opportunity to contemplate. And
Hmm.
so I think that's made a difference. And then it's interesting too, because over the years, I took my certification with Red Cross for abuse prevention. And,
Okay.
yeah. And, at the time, a number of years ago, it was all about how do we deal with bullying, which
Mm.
or before, again, social media was very overt. It was often you're being chased home by somebody, you're being.
Yeah, give me your lunch money, right?
Exactly, exactly. And so when I was in Foam Lake, Saskatchewan, very synchronistically, and this is how this whole trip really unfolded, I was invited to speak to the high school students the very last day of school. I ran into a teacher taking them through a park the day before. And, we talked about the fact that with the principal, I met him the night before, that bullying now is very covert. He says, we don't see it in the schools, but it's there on social media.
Oh
you
yeah.
and even when I was talking to the youth, I had nothing really prepared. I think my message really was, that it takes it takes courage to really be vulnerable, and vulnerability is what builds resilience. So if you're
Yes.
struggling and you talk about it, often we think that's a sign of weakness, right? But even just, having that conversation and talking about, maybe all of a sudden you notice a Facebook post and you didn't get invited to the party, or somebody says something not very nice about you and it goes viral. So there's just, again, this far reaching communication, and it can be used for good and it can be used for harm.
Yeah.
You know? So just that idea of, even personally, I think, you have your days where I go across my Facebook page, and mostly people are posting the best of the best. And if you're
Yeah.
not having a great day, it's easy to go into comparison despair. Well, my life
Hmm.
sucks. Look what they're doing, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if there's one solid reason why it's hard for youth, but I think it was far easier to be raising my kids a number of years ago without social media, without computers, without cell phones.
Yeah. And I think it would be for me as well. I mean, I'll never have that opportunity, but I think it would be just remembering when I was a teenager and, I had to, watch how many minutes I had on my cell phone even. And you had to count every text because every single text costed money. We didn't have the internet at my house. A couple of my friends had it, but it was still pretty in its infancy. Even when I was a teenager, there wasn't Facebook and all of those ones. You had MSN Messenger if you
Mhm.
had it. um, and we still had landlines. So, I think it was a lot easier in that way because if I had to call a friend and I was going to use my landline because I wasn't going to use that mom minutes if I was at home, my mom knew I was on the phone. She could
Right.
tell me to get off of it if she needed the phone, right? Whereas now he's just talking to whoever on his phone and, almost 16 and thinks he knows everything about everything.
Mhm.
Which is not new. I mean, I knew everything about everything at 16 too. But now they have more access to information and misinformation as well.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so when you asked me kind of what I wanted to talk about, I think that's the crux of it is that I really feel passionate now about supporting or doing what I can in terms of supporting youth with mental health. And I think because as I age, I mean, Jane Fonda talks about, if your life was like a play, there's three acts. I'm in the last act of my life. It's a reality. And I think, what is our future? If we say that the youth are our future and 25% of them are dying by suicide, like that's startling. It makes you wonder what's the future for the
Yeah.
world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, what I wanted to do this summer, and I believe I did, was first of all create awareness for jack.org. They have an amazing website. They're doing great work, but still there's lots of people who've never heard of them.
Yeah,
And
I had
do
never.
any high school can invite them in to do a Jack talk. So and these are kids who come in who have been trained and empowered. And I think, even from what I'm understanding, have maybe had their own struggles with mental health. So they're really talking peer to peer. But they also like these programs to be youth driven. So if supposing I talk to the high school in Camrose and they decide to bring someone in for an assembly, then, if there was a couple of people or youth afterwards, so when I spoke to the youth in Foam Lake, one girl came up to me after who was a student and said, "This was really good for us." She said, "You know what?
Good.
We lost a student in the fall, an accident. So the first cause of death for youth is accidents, car accidents, whatever."
Yeah, we have a lot of those because we have a canal here and we like
Yeah,
to go swimming and there's no undertow, but it's really easy to have an accident near water.
right. And again, it's the people left behind that have to process this. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is where the struggle often is that that's what she said. She said, "We needed this message today because that was hard for us to lose that person. And a lot of people bottle things up and they don't talk about it." And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing that I really wanted to talk about in my book is my book is called What If You Could? And I feel like it was very inspired, and it follows pretty much one of the programs that I do coach, which is really supporting people to live from their vision of what they would love based versus from condition driven living, like, okay, oh, nose to the grindstone, no time to think beyond outside of the box of what I'd really love, but it's just like, this is what I got to do to survive.
Yeah.
So it's about a little caterpillar who can think. And right there,
Aw.
you know that there's going to be some problems because a caterpillar can't think. And when you think about nature and the perfection of nature, that caterpillar is going to become a beautiful butterfly if the conditions are right. It
Yes.
doesn't have to think anything. So in this book, though, the caterpillar can think, and he's munching leaves, he's crunching leaves, he's in his first phase, which is, eating milkweeds for
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 weeks. And he's, kind of thinking about his life, and he's thinking, I'm tired. I'm tired of these leaves. I'm tired of sitting on this branch. I don't have much of a life. And then it's interesting because, and to me, that's a great metaphor for vision based living, nose to the grindstone. This is what's in
Yes.
front of me. And then as he's moving into the next cycle, he hangs upside down. So now he's looking up for the first time and he's looking around and he's seeing what's going on in the world. And
Ah,
squirrels that are playing hide and go seek, and mama's feeding their babies, the birds, and
yeah.
wildflowers. And then he starts to think, wow, no wonder I want more for my life too. Like, look what's going on around me. I want more. And so then the voice really goes into the voices that we hear from, the internal voice. And
Mm.
at first of all goes, well, what would you love? I mean, if anything was possible, what would you love? And, he starts to think, and he doesn't say, I want to be a butterfly, but he articulates, oh, I'd love to fly. He knows he wants to be off the branch. I'd love to fly.
Me
I'd,
too.
I'd love to be eating flowers, the nectar of flowers instead of these leaves, and I'd love to be beautiful and colorful instead of this drab little caterpillar. And so he starts to go into these visions, which again is part of how we manifest things, is when we can really emotionalize what we want.
Yeah.
And he's got this beautiful dream and he's thinking about it and he falls asleep. And when he wakes up, he looks around and he sees nothing's changed. And this is often what happens with us. We set this goal and we think we want it to happen now. So think
Mm-hmm.
about New Year's. Everybody sets their intentions of how their life's going to change. And 3 weeks into January, most people fall back to what's easy and familiar because
Yes.
we are governed by. So then he starts to hear from the other voice, the voice that goes, well, who do you think you are? Flying, drinking nectar? Ha, ha. How's that ever going to happen for you? And when you think about it, this is a caterpillar who thinks he's going to fly. That's kind of like the Wright brothers at one time in life thinking they were going to create an airplane. Like, to us, it would seem pretty impossible that this little caterpillar might fly, right?
Yep.
So this voice shuts him down. It's like, well, who do you think you are? And look at you. And it's your dreary coat that keeps you safe. So these are
Yes.
lines in the book. And again, we know that in nature, sometimes the camouflage is what does keep, animals safe. They can blend in. But I also think too that we often just stay in a very dreary life because it's safe and it's comfortable and we don't have to have the pain of growth. So
Yeah.
anyway, he feels really discouraged after he hears from this voice. And he just thinks, well, how can this ever happen to me? Like, yeah, this isn't going to happen. But then this other voice comes back and says, but what if you could? That's the title of the book. What if you could believe and a way will be made? So I won't give it any way more away, but
Yeah.
it's really a metaphor for us, and it's if when we want something, we have to believe it. But the power of a support system and people who believe in you is what really fuels, the ability to keep going when times get tough, because there's
Yeah.
rigor to change, right? If it was easy, we'd all do it. And it's just,
Yeah.
it claps back. So this book is written as a picture book for children 4 to 8. It's rhyming. It ends with really inviting the reader to lean into what they would love, to know
Okay.
that if they think about it, they're going to hear from two voices. And this is my message for mental health. We want to normalize that voice that's not very nice because it's there.
That's what I was thinking as you were talking about the book and the voice that's telling them no, no, no. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my inner voice all the time. I've learned over the years to change it to be more positive, but that voice when I was a kid, and like you said, the book's for kids. When I was a kid, it was horrible. It was
Yeah.
just like that caterpillar. Who do you think you are? Why do you think you're going to be able to do this? You can't do this.
Yeah. And when we live with mental health, like let's take this now into being a young adult, this is what we need to learn, is that voice is normal.
Yes.
So instead of paying attention to it, we acknowledge it's there and then we lean into the voice that says, but what if you could? This
Yeah.
to me is the voice of this. I mean, when I started out and said, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, there is something breathing you and there is something breathing me. I can't do that on my own. There is a
Mm-hmm.
power in this universe that is going to take that caterpillar to a butterfly. There's a power in the universe that if I put a seed in the ground and I water it and I let it be, there is an energy that's going to bring that out. And so that power is in that voice within us. That's the voice that says, what if we could? Believe. You have to believe. And this is where people often fall short. There's
Yeah.
paradigms that say, I don't deserve. It happens for everybody but me. This is when the other shoe drops. Things go good for a while. And this
Yeah.
how we actually sabotage ourselves. So this
Yes.
book is written for children, but I'm selling it to coaches who are using it with other adults. I think it's an amazing graduation gift for anybody. When my
It
son
sounds so
graduated,
sweet.
when I graduated from high school, or my son graduated from high school, I got him "Oh, the Places You'll Go" by Dr. Seuss.
Oh, yes.
This is kind of the vision I have for this book. The message is universal. And when I was in, you might be familiar with Presqu'île Provincial Park. It's in Ontario. Okay, it's after Coburn. You know where Coburn is. So you're south. You're kind of, anyways, on the other side of
I
Ontario.
don't geography very well.
But anyways, I had my book. I left on my biking tour from Pike Lake, where when I was 5 years ago, I was bringing my kayak out of the lake when my phone rang and I was told my brother died. So I decided 5 years from the day I got the news, which was Father's Day this past June, I decided to start my tour right there. And
Oh,
then my bike, so I left on the 19th of June. My book actually never published until the 19th of July. So
ah,
I had a pre-sale link that people, I mean, it was in the works. I had been accepted by a publisher, but I didn't have a copy of the book with me. So I was giving out little cards and telling people to check. It would be on my website when it was available. So I
yeah.
really did get a copy of it. I stayed somewhere long enough after I had a cycling accident
Oh no.
in Whitby, and I had an opportunity to order it on Amazon. So I did. And I carried one copy with me. And when I was in Presqu'île Park, I befriended this young woman. Well, not, she was in her 50s, a beautiful woman, told her what I was doing. She asked me about my book, and I says, "Well, here, I have a copy." And she was reading it out loud, and she was crying. She turned the page and she was crying. And
Aw.
she goes, "Oh my God, my kids are in their 20s. They need this book as much as anybody." And so that really, to me, was the power of the message in that book. And again, it's really learning to lean into the voice that's encouraging us to not give up.
Yeah.
It's the one that shuts us down, and it's so easy. And I mean, I heard from that voice so much, even from the time I was going to write this book. It was like, well, who are you to write a book? You've never written a book. How are you going to
Right.
get
Yeah.
out there? What's going to make your book different than anybody else's? What if nobody reads it? Blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go that Charlie Brown voice. Wah, wah,
Wah,
wah.
wah, wah, wah. Yep.
And then here I am. I'm 67, deciding I'm going to ride my bike across Canada. Like, how crazy is that? I had never ridden a bike more than one day in a row ever.
Oh,
And
oh wow.
I'm getting on my bike day after day. And in the end, I biked 1,780 kilometers to end up on Parliament Hill. So pretty,
Wow.
just a wonderful feeling. I mean, first of all, that I did it. There was
Mm-hmm.
times when, I'll tell you, it was tough. There was times when I thought, whose idea was this anyway? A lot of those WTF moments.
Mm-hmm.
Why did I want to do this? But from this side of it now, and there's a beautiful saying that everything you want is on the other side of fear. And it is so true.
I
It's so
like that.
true. If we really want to live into our becoming, we have to be willing to let go of what is not serving us anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
I read this yesterday, because I'm always preparing for my coaching calls. Either you're on your green, how does it say? You are either on your green growing edge, or you're ripe and you're rotting.
Hmm.
Yeah. So again, we're not meant to just hit a plateau and never move forward.
Yeah.
We are always being part of nature, called to grow. And when you look at nature, nothing, nothing is stagnant. Even in the winter, when you see the leaves off the trees, this is almost like that liminal phase when they're getting ready again to, you know, sprout come spring, right?
Yeah. That's awesome. So this actually leads us perfectly into tell me about your book, which you have been, but where do people get it?
Actually, what I could do, and it's too bad I didn't screen share with you, is I can have a link. I can send a link right to you. And if you want to
Perfect.
put it in, it's available everywhere: Amazon, Ingram, Indigo. If they go into a bookstore and say, I want it, the bookstore can order it. So
Wonderful. And where do they follow you?
they can visit me at my website. It's just Lynne, Lynne, Harley, just like the motorcycle, Harley.com.
Perfect.
All the
And
contact information is on the website too. If they want to reach out, if they think
perfect.
they want the support of a coach or decide what coaching with me would look like, then they can reach out and we can have a session together just to determine if we're a good fit.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, any final thoughts for anybody who's listening now? Let's say final thoughts for the parent, because we've talked about youth and their struggles, but for the parents out there that are like, I want to help, but I don't know what to do.
Actually, this is perfect because I was thinking this is something I had wanted to mention. So back to jack.org. I'm going to send you all these links when we're done.
Yes.
Jack.org. So I have actually a donation page and it's just / what if you could tour. So as I biked across Canada, people were also making donations. The other
Oh,
thing I would
cool.
really like listeners to know is that every book that I sell, a portion of that is going to jack.org. So you're doing a good thing if you buy the book. And on jack.org now, even though it's a Canadian organization, a charitable organization, so if anyone makes a donation, they get a receipt for income tax. They've created a program called Be There. It's a certification program. It's free. It's
Oh.
self-paced. And so even though this is a Canadian organization, because this is a website, anybody in the world can take this.
Mm-hmm.
It's self-paced, so people walk through it. It's interactive. And at the end of doing it, they get a certification. And it gives it, first of all, I think every parent should do it because it really helps determine sort of where people are on the mental health spectrum. And if youth do it, this is actually meant for youth, it helps them tap into their own mental health and wellness, right? And then the other thing that it does is it supports anybody who does this, how to be there for somebody who
Mm-hmm.
they might think is struggling. And not in the sense of doing an intervention, but in the sense of how do I support them to get the help they need.
Yeah.
I'm not training people to do anything. And when you go to the website, one of the first disclaimers is this is not like a place for intervention. But their goal is by 2025, there will be 1 million people in the world certified with this program. So it's
Wow.
a program I would encourage anybody, youth or parents, family members, and especially, you know, there's nobody I'm sure that's listening to this call that hasn't been affected by somebody who struggles with mental health and wellness.
Exactly.
And that's what we have to start acknowledging is that, and maybe there's a way that we can be there for someone to support them to get the help they need. And
Yeah.
if we're going to start changing the statistic, of 25% of youth deaths are suicide related, I think we all need to know how to be there for people
Mm-hmm.
struggling and
Yes.
allow the conversation to happen and encourage them to talk about what they're feeling as opposed to holding it inside.
Yeah.
So,
So that is perfect. Perfect unsolicited advice. I always say that because I'm always telling people not to give advice, but that's all we do on the show.
well, it's an invitation. I like to call it an invitation that
Oh,
this resource is available for people and it's free.
I
So,
like that. And of course, yes, all of the links we're going to put in the description down below, so that you can very easily get access to all of this information. You don't have to try and remember or go back and listen to it over and over. It's going to be easy right there for you so that you can get a hold of it, because what's the point of sharing this information if we're not going to make it accessible?
awesome.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Lynne.
Well, and thank you. I just again appreciate the opportunity. It was my pleasure to show up on your podcast, to share what I'm doing, and to really, I think, create the awareness so we can change the way, we go through life
Yes.
when we're struggling. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Keep doing your good work and getting people out there that can share stuff like this.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
As always, thank you so much for the amazing guests that we have on the show. Be sure to check out their links down in the description below. If you want to support the channel, go ahead and check out our merch store. We've got some very cool things on there. That's my favorite. Sorry, I'm busy ending the stigma. But there's some other very cool designs. 10% of the proceeds always goes back to the Canadian Mental Health Association. Be sure to follow us on Facebook at RB Media because we have some great new shows coming up and you never want to miss any of those episodes. And remember, the only way to end the stigma of mental health is to speak openly and honestly. Bye.